Hello. When we learn what a second grade equation is, we normally learn how to solve them with the with a formula to solve second grade equations. So a second grade equation is something is an equation that takes this form. So where the the maximum index is a 2. Okay. And we learned that we can solve those equations with the famous formula x equals minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And this is a great formula, okay? Um, it's a fantastic formula, and it will be very useful for you when solving second grade equations. But there are cases when you don't need to use this formula, and it's faster not to use it, and because there's a higher and there's a higher risk of making mistakes if you do. If you do solve them with this formula, you will get to the solution, but it will take longer, and there's a higher chance of making mistakes. And what are those cases? Well, in this video, we will talk about incomplete second grade equations, and in another video, we will talk about my approach to solving second grade equations, which is basically, first of all, is it can we is it incomplete? If it's incomplete, we follow this this methods we will teach today. Then we will try to factorize, or we will try to see if it's a perfect well, factorize or perfect square. And only when we haven't been able to use the previous methods will we use the formula. Okay, and I always try to simplify before, and I'll explain about that. Okay, so today we're going to look at incomplete second grade equations. What does that mean? That means that either they don't have an A, don't have a B, or don't have a C. First case is the easiest one, A equals 0. Well, if A equals 0, we're not talking about a second grade equation, are we? Because then we have bx plus c equals 0, which is not a second grade equation, and can be solved, as we've seen, simply by putting x as the subject of the formula. So this is not a second grade equation. So really, A equals 0 is not a case, but I want to mention it just in case someone is asking that question. So first thing would be if b equals 0. If b equals 0, we have something like this. Okay, and this is a second grade equation. Okay, so we might have 4x squared. Let me see, I had an example here. Okay, so we might have 4x squared minus 9 equals 0, and it is a second grade equation. But I recommend you never to do the formula directly, because there's an easy way to solve this. How? Just again leave x as the subject of the formula. So we will do 4x squared equals 9, x squared equals 9 fourths, x equals plus minus the square root of 9 fourths, which gives us two answers: the plus 3 halves and minus 3 halves. Okay, this is very important. Always remember to put the plus minus there, because that gives you the two solutions. How many solutions are there in an equation? Well, up to the grade of the equation. Okay, so in this case you can have up to two solutions. So if you don't put the plus minus, you're leaving out the minus solution. It's very important. Plus minus, and this gives us the two solutions that we need, because it's a second grade equation. Okay, so if b equals 0, just leave x as the subject of a formula, and you obtain directly that. This takes me 3 seconds or 5 seconds. much less than time than the formula, and the chances of making a mistake are lower. Okay, what happens when c equals 0? And when c equals 0, we have something like this, which again is a second grade equation, but again has an easier way to solve it. How? Well, just by factorizing, because if you see in an example, we might have 4x plus 3x squared plus 3x equals 0. If this is the case, you can see that there's a common factor here, which is x. We can extract x as a common factor, and we then have this. Okay, and this allows us to solve it much easier because, and this is something that I want to remind you of, if two things are being multiplied and they must be equal to 0, this we can immediately forget about one of the things and make the first factor equals to 0 or the second factor equals to 0, and that gives us the two solutions. Why? Because if a equals 0, I don't care what b is. 0 times whatever is going to be 0. And likewise, if b equals 0, I don't care what a is, the multiplication is going to give 0. Okay, so if we have this, I don't have to think. Just put the first factor equals to 0 and the second factor equals 0. So this gives us the first solution and the second solution, which will always be there because x always can be extracted as a factor in this case. And the second solution will be just, this isn't the second grade equation. We can do it as the same as we did in case A. So that's minus 3 divided by 4. Okay, so we have the two solutions. Okay, so again, when we're doing incomplete second grade equations, do not use the formula. You can solve them much faster if we follow this method. Okay, and then in a second video, I'll show you how to solve complete second grade equations by the method I told you before, trying to factorize first or trying to find the perfect square and if not the formula.